The ancient legends and recent ramblings of creatures of the paranormal have been with us for thousands of years, and to explain things by illustrating them can be more effective than word of mouth, even though I've just made that up right now. We have been doing this for thousands of years, from the simple methods of cave paintings to the more spectacular, sophisticated works of the Renaissance. But what about the cryptids that are associated with pop and conspiracy culture? Well, for today, let's appreciate them as art. And because I'm not a video that shrills in the first 2 minutes, let's begin. It feels like every country has their main monster, and with the UK it hails from Scotland, the infamous Loch Ness Monster. Sightings of this aquatic monster date back to medieval times, and a lot of artists have taken a stab at bringing the beast to life. Arguably the best one was done by Gino di Achin, portraying it as the plesiosaurus we believe it to be. It's magnificent, driving home the kind of wonder but also the fearsome nature of it, as we see it return to the waters while feasting on a sheep, by having an onlooker next to an automobile looking at something that should be long extinct. It's a lot more cooler than something that's just a silhouette. From the loch to the oceans of our planet, most of it's still a mystery, waiting to be explored, and makes our imagination run wild to think what could lurk down there. And throughout history there's been so many illustrations, from eyewitness accounts to just decoration, as plenty of the old maps had a lot of them dotted around the four corners of the world. And probably the most feared was the Kraken. With its roots from Greek mythology, it's this giant behemoth that is told by the tales of sailors that are quite possibly drunk, or just mistaking it for a giant squid. But still, to be attacked by one on the surface has to be a pretty scary thing. It's usually the one that is used to get across what this thing looks like, even though there's no real information about it apart from it came from 1802. All I know is that there's nothing being attached to tentacles that hasn't been good. By the way, these maps need to come in style again. Carnivorous plants always seem to pop up here and there, and even though they're technically real, the ones we're fascinated with are the ones that are big enough to eat a person. But was there a possibility that these were once real? Well, there was something called the Madagascar tree. It was said to devour live humans. It was reported back in 1874. The picture you see right now comes from the book Sea and Land by J.W. Buell, and it was from this that presented the idea that it was real, due to the fact that the book was meant to be scientifically accurate, even if the pictures are over-exaggerated. Despite that, it's still horrifying. The myths and legends of North America seem to write themselves. The people who get a brief glimpse at something have their paranoia take the reel. Then we got something like Bigfoot, or how the natives know him, Sasquatch. Its history goes back even before the white man stepped foot on the new continent. But it only really became popular in the 1950s, so there's no main one to go to. BG is mostly known for the shaky cam footage videos and up-close and personal lumberjack pic. There's no equivalent piece like the one of the Jersey Devil. It's widely popular, and even though, again, we don't know the name of the artist, it was from the Philadelphia Bulletin. Shown as kind of like a hybrid between a camel, horse, deer, and bat. Even though it's somewhat comical compared to other ones, there's still something very unsettling about it. Maybe the odd, simple design reminds you of the childlike drawings of the things we're supposed to be frightened of in scary movies. That you feel it's going to be a lot worse in real life. But remember, this thing is meant to be a demon. And that brings me on to the kind of more new stuff, such as this one of the Wendigo. Even though a lot of work went into it, it kind of lacks style. It's impressive the technology we have to create or recreate these things, but it's never on par with the old stuff. But I guess it's all subjective. For example, compare these two versions of the Leshy. You can think of this one as more effective. Maybe it's because it looks like Saturn devouring his son. But how could I do a video like this without mentioning Spring-Heeled Jack? And now that I've mentioned him, how about those aliens? Along with their transportation, have to be the most documented paranormal events ever. The cave walls of our ancestors could be seen as evidence that they were once visited by them. And in my opinion, and yes, this is an opinion piece, the best one is Kenneth Arnold's UFO sighting in 1947 that popularized the flying saucer myth. Artist David R. Harding does a good job recreating it, like a snapshot in history, within the fine detailed cockpits with Arnold himself, seeing the UFOs fly by over the majestic landscape of Washington. And it's interesting to take note that the designs of the UFOs are not the classic saucer shape, they look more like a boomerang. But what about those aliens that track on land? I bring up the Flatwoods Monster. If it really is an alien, it's definitely more peculiar and unique than the stereotypical greys. This nun-looking thing was reported back in the 1950s. I guess it got a lot of notice, as how it was seen in the papers. And recently, the picture from the newspaper has been recovered. And it's nice to see they put a person in there for scale, instead of the usual person looking at us waving. So what do you think is the best cryptid illustration? Or better yet, what do you think is the worst? Apart from this one. Thank you for watching. Now, back to your almost normal lives.